Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
and inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. My guest today is George Mundassery, former Senior Vice President and Global Head of AI and Automation at Tech Mahindra. Over his career of 40 plus years, George shares his extensive journey in the IT industry, starting from his early days with Tatas in power systems to his role in automation and AI implementation. George recounts his experiences working with various technologies as they evolved, including mainframes, real-time systems, Fortran 77, C, and C++, and later transitioning to commercial applications and enterprise solutions with middleware such as Tuxedo and WebLogic. He also discusses the challenges and successes in delivering large-scale applications, the importance of data management, and the critical role of customer engagement and team collaboration. Finally, George offers some valuable advice for aspiring IT professionals and those navigating mid-career questions, emphasizing continuous learning, teamwork, and adapting to change. Listen on. Hi, George. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hello, Shiv. Good afternoon. Very nice to be with you on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay, so this is something that I've been waiting for a long time, because I'm generally curious about how architects even think, or when you solve a problem, how do you go about doing that and all that. But before that, how you got to be an architect and all that, you can start with your origin story. How did you get associated with computers or IT, and then what all you've been doing, and then we will take it from there.
Right. You call me architect, maybe I'm sure that I know that we're known for a while and maybe 30, 40 years together. Let me see, I can rewind a little back from where I got all started. So I got into this, I wouldn't say accidentally, but I joined initially with Tatas. I think it's more on the power systems and electrical design, and the people who really design the power systems and distribute and generate and transmit the power, and then more of distribution and the management of these where their core focus. I ran into this division, but they had called R&D, which is more into simulation of their engineering processes, and this is what really got me interested in some sense. I missed the whole mainframe era. I mean, in some way, because my launch into this industry was through some of these so-called real-time systems, which I think those days it was Siemens and Knox Data.
Okay.
These companies who supplied these machines, which is pretty much run in sync with the time. So one of a huge constraint was that to be in sync with the time. So you have to be very conscious about the programs you write. And the initial load of things I got into was into Fortran 77.
Okay.
That's what my launch into the industry rather. I mean, obviously moved from there to writing applications in C, maybe to some degree in C++ in the same line of power engineering and electrical distribution type of area. But then I switched to another Tatas where it was the Unisys side and got more into the commercial side of applications and financial and banking and related areas. And obviously been part of delivering some of the very large applications. In fact, we created a product that time, which was more, I would say, very early state of a CBIL. I mean, it's a CRM type of.
Okay.
And then we had used these systems, or rather TP monitors, if you're familiar with this. Maybe one of the most famous TP monitor after the Kicks. This is called Tuxedo, and Unisys had a version of Tuxedo, or rather a clone of Tuxedo, which is called OpenOil TP. So this is really what was the middleware so-called at that time. And then we actually developed some kind of a platform to generate the code using some meta language. And then it was a very successful thing in what we did. In fact, we had a 3 or 4 installations in the US, one of the bank in South Africa, and things like that. So that's something been a very exciting journey with that. I would say product or platform, whichever way you look at it. It was more of making it easy to develop the code and write the code and launch it faster, easier, and so on and so forth. I think that was my first stint, if I can say, and maybe some of these close, I would say, affinity to some. I mean, if you really look at the initial simulator engagement, it was a real SI work. I mean, it had huge panels, which is coming from some other Tata firm, and then we had the software from Siemens. So I had a huge, I would say, wealth of experience coming directly into an SI world with all this and with some very time constraint type of programming in the real-time type of system. So maybe it kept me hooked on to tech, been very curious about to know what is going on underneath, and the models and architecture to make it successful, and so on and so forth. So all I can say is that the rest of the 30 years continued from there. I had been in another 10 years with HCL Pero systems. And again, it gave me a good amount of startup experience. I can say that because when we got started it in Bangalore, it was a very small team. It was piggybacked on a small company that was acquired by HCL at that time. And we kind of expanded that, to bring in all other verticals and deliveries and so on and so forth. So it was I would say another 10 years of very interesting life, and there was no dull day, I could say. Telecom, billing systems, cargo, booking systems. And then I also got into a role of being a CTO for that company, running the solutioning across the whole organization, and so on and so forth. And after that, and maybe it was 2006 is when I got into the Tech Mahindra, where we had set up the Bangalore part of the TechM. And again, it was a good stint of setting up from ground up. And then obviously, there's a lot of telecom customers there. And I was managing almost the initial 10 years of my stint there was on the large account in UK and multiple transformation programs and operations and application support and management and everything that you can think of with some 2,000 3,000 applications that is part of the portfolio. So that's been the thing. And maybe I would say that I could end my career, or rather I still continue to be doing something, but maybe last 2 years when I got out of industry formally, the last 8 years has been the most interesting, if I can say, because I again got into setting up this unit for automation and AI for TechM. That is 2015 when we launched this whole effort. Of course, it was something ground up again. At then it was the Watson days and RPA days and maybe the initial wave of AI, which then gone into the Googles and Amazon's, everyone joining the party and become more open source, and then evolved into today's got Gen AI and whatnot, right? So when I got out of the industry, maybe I'm exiting at a high, and I'm pretty sure that last 2 years that kept me going and being very close to what is going on and keeping a tab. So that's been in a very, very short form that what I'm. And I mean, since you mentioned me architect, I think what I enjoyed the most is managing the change. I mean, if I can say that, because I don't know that's only the role of an architect, because I really enjoyed things getting live. I mean, that's where, you have to get the people, the customer, the, team, I mean, the entire thing, and obviously the technology and tools and whatnot, right? But then getting it all into action to get an outcome. I mean, that's what really kept me going. And then I've been very lucky, to have some phenomenal leaders and mentors who really pushed me into that. I mean, every time when I got into it, I knew that this could be a challenge for me. It wasn't really a easy ride, but I knew what I'm trying to do. So learning was eventually being always there. I mean, always I had to learn to survive, or whatever you want to call it. Luckily, that's been it is. So, so that's what it is, Shiv, and a brief of me.
Yeah, wonderful, George. In fact, as you were describing, I could relate to a few things right from Fortran programming. Okay,
Fortran, okay.
that is the
Fortran
first
7,
language.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the first language that I also wrote my code in.
Okay, okay.
And then, of course, the different roles that you have played from simulation and real-time data.
Yeah.
When you had to work on this, the CRM kind of solution that you mentioned, right? Where also, I'm assuming you're probably connecting to different aspects of data about the customer, trying to collate, consolidate, and all that.
Yeah.
Did you see any major differences in terms of one, the data coming in or data available? More specifically, what I was looking at is typically in engineering solutions, let's say power engineering or whatever,
Yeah.
there is a lot more structure and discipline in terms of the data structure or how it comes in. Whereas if you talk about applications, integrating it across applications,
Yeah.
you may not have the same rigor or thing, right? So what are some of the your own adjustments to accept these things and do something, or how did you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, I would think this happened maybe almost 30 years ago. Even today, if I had to say this, in spite of all the AI advancements, what we are claiming, when you go underneath some of these organizations, you see how poor or pathetic their data architecture and the way they deal with data is. I mean, unless you get that in control, I mean, there's no way you're going to be successful, in terms of getting the insights or intelligence out of that, which, everything else what we talk about in the form of AI or Gen AI or anything else. So even if I had to rewind to those days, I mean, even banks, I mean, one, obviously it was so hard to get anything out of banks, it's for whatever reasons of regulatory issues and so on and so forth. But then they also didn't have that perspective of thinking. I mean, I know they have a lot of data, they get statements and they get reports, and but a simple thing that managing the relationship of a customer, which will have an impact on a relative who is also part of that same bank. I mean, there was a very famous example that we used to talk about those days when we sell this product. I mean, there's one of these bank where is a lady come in and give you a check for cashing. The officer finds some minor mistake or rather change in the signature, and then he rejects the checks, for example, right? And you find that the next day a very important corporate account get closed, and then that was held by the husband of this lady who came in the previous day. The officer could never make out anything. I mean, looking at her account or the relationship. So this used to be one theme that we had in that product. Now, if you need to construct this, it is not just the raw data that will help. You need to really form these relationships, and create that metadata or whatever you call it. So those are some of the things that we set up through that product, right? So to your data question, I mean, how do we get insights out of the raw data? I mean that problem existed 30 years ago, and I'm sure it exists even today. I would think that technologies has improved, but I still think some of the mindsets and, like I said again earlier, that change mindset, I mean, even at the customer side is a very important thing. It is not about a service provider or a person, a software integrator or anyone trying to help won't be enough, because it has to be like a culture, right? I mean, how do I get the data in order and get it in an order that it will be able to give me the insights and use it effectively. So that whole data management, I still think is, even today, it's relevant. I mean, I know I can relate to what happened those days, but I mean, there's no shortcuts there. I think you have to really work through it. I mean, today you have better technologies, maybe there is all these graph DBs and I mean, a whole lot of things that you can use to form that type of structures easier and better. But still, somewhere you have to start that journey of data transformation.
So that's actually very nice. Moving into the next question that I had. In your role as a CTO, right? Somewhere I find that even that label, calling just as a chief technology officer,
Right.
probably hides the challenges of the culture, or how do you get the technology adopted,
Yeah.
right? And what you talked about in terms of making sense of data or connecting the data and all that. Now, at
Yeah.
least long back now, we used to talk more about data structures and algorithms. If you look at Nuth and others, before you get into even coding or
Yeah.
implementing it.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at solving a problem, how important is it to understand not only today's data or the master data or something that may be static, but what is actually happening in real time or through various transactions, and then how do you kind of uh, help the application be a little more smarter?
No, I feel the crux of it, if I can say, is even though you have the best of the use case, right? I think you're going into a customer base, telling him that I can do this. It is always good to engage with the right people there and then make them understand what is the benefit, because many times while we have the greatest of the idea, unless you really have them open up and support, in many of these cases it can be only a failure. I mean, even though we put all the effort. So it's so important. Many times I find the engagement and they understand, what are we trying to achieve from a goal point of view. I mean, these things, as much as we understand and our team understand, it is better we also educate the customer. And I know many times it can be the other way also, because the customer would have already thought through this and they come to you, look, I want to do this, and that's much easier. I mean, maybe then you don't have this problem of selling them, this whole idea. But many times when you are really trying to break into a customer, I think it is the other way. It's very important that they understand what finally is involved from their side also, to make it successful. Otherwise, technically, all I can say is that, I mean, just not the data. I mean, if I'm putting together an application environment, and like I said, I mean, these models have been changing for the last 40 years. I mean, there is no way it's been standing still, whether it was trained in client servers and middlewares and distributed architectures and microservices or whatever you call it. Obviously, code and the algorithm and data is key, but there is also this whole surrounding thing around it. I mean, the non-functional aspects which you want to consider very early on, because otherwise you will get stuck. And I had many examples which, sometimes you get into examples where somebody screwed up and then you really wanted to go fix it. And then when you look inside, you realize it was such a silly thing, which you would have missed maybe in the beginning, which you could have taken care. I know I've been maybe talking very abstract, but I have many of them running in my head where we have gone into that type of things and then we realize how can you make such a simple mistake. So I feel non-functional things, considering into the whole design from early on, it doesn't matter whether you are still building a cloud native or microservice or whatever. And there may be best practices. It's not like you have to invent this from scratch, right? But then that is clearly a delivery leader's or an architect's role. I mean, rather first priority, I would say, apart from engaging with the customer and motivating the team and everything else that you do.
Yeah. For those silly mistakes, as you were describing, a couple of things came from my experience. One was, making assumptions about limits and hard coding them. Oh, there'll not be more than 10 users at a time. So you put somewhere 10, and then it's very difficult to find out, why it is failing for the 11th user.
I will tell one example, Shiv.
Yeah.
I won't take a customer I know maybe
Yeah.
bad. It's a UK customer, a rental customer. They had a global operation. They came to us because their application was not performing. These were the I don't know, you recall the EJB days, the session beans, NGT beans, being all these fancy things, WebLogic days. It's before Oracle acquired WebLogic. So WebLogic was the kind of saving the world type of time.
Right.
You know what these guys did? They actually used these beans in a way and form that they made a chain at a session, which is going to bloat your infrastructure so badly. So it all remain in the session for a single user.
Oh.
And it worked well for 10 users, 15 users. When they really rolled out globally, the whole thing stalled. I mean, and it's no wonder. I mean, I'm pretty sure it is so easy to figure out. But I think it's a very simple mistake. You have to really think through that. Yeah, you're going to have, 500 users concurrent, right? I mean, that should be a goal to start with. Things like that, right? I mean, so I'm just giving an example, but then we never got into re-engineering or refactoring, but we could just give them a report. Look, this is what needs to be done.
Okay.
And then I did themselves. It was like a consulting type of thing we did. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. In fact, one of the values that we hear from our listeners is that when they hear these kind of stories, they say, "Oh, I think I also made that mistake," or "Oh, we should not, or we should also look at these and all that." I mean, it looks silly in hindsight, but probably at that time, it was not so obvious, because if it was,
no, you read the user manual of message beans, it has no problem. It works. I mean, it works in single thread, but then when your user numbers goes up, it spawns so many, and your hardware kind of get to a limit. I mean, those things maybe they're somewhere, but then point is, I mean, you have to really test it. At least you will not go live with something like this.
So then another question was, you mentioned that you were working on the early versions of Tuxedo.
Yeah.
So when such a platform is released and then there are not too many reference installations and so on, how do you quickly assimilate what it can do, cannot do, and then design around it or design for it?
No, that's I can give you one story. In fact, it's a very close to me. I mean, the heart of what I've done in my 30, 40 years.
Okay.
This was for the cargo application. I mean, it's in Germany. It's in Frankfurt. I used to sit right across the runway for almost 3 years, watching all these flights take off. It's been a re-engineering requirement for a very large airline, Germany based. And they had a very interesting outcome that they wanted to achieve called 5x80. They used to be running an A series machine, Unisys, if you remember, A series mainframes, all their backend operations. And they used to have a few disjointed Unix applications here and there, and then some enterprise applications. So idea was to really do a system integration of this. And these were the early days when the online thing started to come in, late 90s, rather the same time e-commerce boom was going on. So they wanted to really roll out a online e-booking type of thing to their agents worldwide. That was the transformation objective, and we did a pilot. Now, coming back to your Tuxedo question, I think it was not exactly Tuxedo, but it was WebLogic.
Okay.
I'll come to Tuxedo in a minute because Tuxedo was also involved in a few transactions. But I mean, if you recall the WebLogic roadmap, there used to be a thing called WebLogic Enterprise those days. WebLogic Enterprise was a Corba implementation,
Okay.
And they used to run WebLogic Enterprise and WebLogic side by side, and some of the integrations they want to do with the Unix and the mainframe type of the world, they used to do through WebLogic Enterprise,
Okay.
and the rest used to be through WebLogic Server.
Mm.
Now, so I used to be the one who was running with this whole program, and BEA at that time hasn't released this product, and we did
Okay.
a pilot.
Uh-huh.
It was a huge undertaking that actually BA has to undertake that whole risk that we are going to be giving you the product, in a usable form by so and so date, and so there was a three-way agreement between all of us that you will get it to deliver. But that was a very tough moment for us to really proceed with that assumption. I mean, if anywhere that you make a delay or whatever, it's really going to impact us, the customer, and that whole timeline. But then it was so early in the cycle, like you rightly asked, there was not enough documentation. There was not enough things to look around. So we used to really engage with the BA guys, some of the lab guys, and then when we made the pilot and prototype, we had to work with that. And then, we were possibly the first customer going live with that.
Okay.
Something like that. But then, while on one hand it was very challenging, it was, a real good thing that we did. Finally, it turned out to be all good. We went live. Went live with a routing engine and, almost taking out the A series backend by integrating using this Corba type of gateways, using the WebLogic Enterprise. And it was a very huge case for even PA those days. And even Tuxedo was involved in that, in some of the integrations. So Tuxedo was not really the problem because it was a very well vetted product by that time. But I mean, and it was used by this company, so it was fairly easy for us to integrate into this. But the real technical risk was in the WebLogic Enterprise, and for me, we will really have to underwrite or rather the risk involved in it. BA is behind us, or rather, it was like a joint three-party thing. So I know I wouldn't call all the risk to us, but then a lot of technical risk. I mean, it was something that we really deep dived and straight gone into it, but came successfully out of it. I would say, and I think it was one of the very large transformations also that I was involved, and it was a very big case for us also, which we took around getting many other programs.
Yeah, that's really nice. Handling a lot of uncertainties and things that keep changing, different parties and all that. So the natural follow-up to that,
Yeah, I know.
you also talked about working in a startup mode, right? Both HCL Pero and later on setting up and all that, right? Where also I'm assuming
correct.
there would be a lot of constraints when you start in terms of resources and number of members in the team,
There
etc.
are no
Customers
constraints,
on one
okay.
side. So how was that experience?
You really need to work with a few good guys, I mean, in the beginning. And I was lucky that I could move a few people from the past where I used to work and that type of a trusted team. But I cannot say that that is enough for us to really deliver anything large enough. So yes, I mean, if I had to look at the initial days of that XPS time, or even the Tech Mahindra, we had to really go recruit. So we have done quite a bit of that, personally involved in it. I mean, there's no shortcut there. I mean, you have to be hands-on to,
Okay.
we can make the process and maybe easier and faster, but then you have to really go around, get the right skills required, at least base skills. I mean, sometimes you really need to make them undergo some courses or, coach them and make them learn. But then there are some basic things that we need when, people come in. So that really we had to work hard to recruit and make it happen. I know we had HR, we had recruitment, all the functions,
Mm.
but there's no way that you can issue a mail and then sit back. I mean, these were very hands-on, right down to the make it happen type of roles. So I think that's what I could say. I mean, I've been in the middle of that. And I mean, obviously you have a trusted set of team, so they would really run with you. I mean, you have to just keep that team motivated to make sure that you get to the goal. Yeah, I mean, that initial ramp up is a hurdle. I mean, I would say that it has to be get past. Yeah.
So, of the three dimensions that you touched upon, now one is, of course, working with technology, solving problem solutions, and all that. One is working with customers, and the third is all these, what some people call as, overheads.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Recruitment, setting up.
Yeah.
So, what did you enjoy most, and then what would you rather not have done?
No, that's what I said, Shiv. I really enjoyed the confluence of this. I mean, in isolation, I wouldn't have enjoyed sitting and understanding a WebLogic enterprise forever,
Mm,
for sure. I
mm,
wouldn't have just been enjoyed by recruiting, right? But then I enjoyed that 580, if I can say that. I mean,
yeah,
that was a
okay.
hard role. I didn't explain to you what is 580. So what they wanted is 80% of their transactions, they wanted to complete in 5 seconds. That
Oh,
was the
okay.
kind of I know we were not five in the beginning, but then after a year or so, we could get there.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
and you'll be surprised. They used to have about 40 to 50% fallouts.
Oh,
At the time when we got into that, so we pushed that envelope to 80%, 80% online, less than 5 seconds. That was a goal, and
mm,
and I really get kicked in when I get to see some outcome or goal like that, and because that gets you the whole, confidence of all this,
yeah,
Same with, I mean, the example I was telling, maybe the telco side, many of the transformations that we did, very similar profile. I mean, I know some of it I've been failed. I can say that because of purely that we miscalculated the time.
mm,
And that is one thing there's been a huge learning from a domain standpoint, right? I think I don't know how much you know about MPLS as a networking technology, and we try to re-engineer a product line of MPLS.
yeah,
Maybe that's the most complex beast around, right? And then
mm,
maybe understanding it as much in depth and taking the amount of gravity that is needed to deliver. Maybe we overcome it, or I mean, took it lightly. We had gone through some. I mean, I also been through some very serious failures, which really helped me to humble. I mean, not everything is rosy, and I'm sure some of these you need to really learn. Before we get into some of these transformations. Yeah. So I think that's what it is. I wouldn't think I enjoy any of this in isolation. I mean, if you ask me,
okay.
that's how I would rather term it. Yeah.
Yeah, and as a related question, I'll come back to probably in a little bit. But before that, two other things which I just wanted to get clarity on. Um, yeah, one of the roles that you mentioned is also about working on automation. Automation and AI is what you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Um, how easy or challenging was it to work with other developers?
That 8 years has been really a challenge. The reason I pretty much worked with about 300 odd customers, meaning not individually myself, but I had the oversight of the entire organization
Yeah.
across, I would say, starting from BPO down to the networks, right? Infrastructure, applications, engineering services, every part of the organization. And we took some goals. I would say that in 2015, when many companies made these noises about automation and cutting down 40,000 people, I'm sure that you've been through those journey and then a whole lot of marketing thing around it. I think one thing company took very boldly was cannibalizing, right? They were open to cannibalize. I mean, that was a huge thing in my view, because I was given a mandate to go do it in the accounts that we already deliver. And that's a very, very bold thing to do because you're almost cutting down your revenue, right? In many ways. You're improving your productivity, you are reducing your, revenues. But that was something really open up. I mean, so there was a very, I would say, bold directive coming all the way from CEO, which helped me, to clear the grounds in terms of making it happen. But that said, I mean, like you said, I mean, the challenge was not just internal, right? Like I said, this is where I have to really see a lot of customers confronting with us, right? I mean, they were not ready. I mean, I know we have an engine maybe fast forward and running, but they were not ready to run with us, right? So the failure is not really coming internal. Many times our customers were not ready. And internally, obviously, it was a huge amount of, I would say, change management. I mean, because you know this very well. I mean, an automation, and especially those days when it got started, it was all RPA, but then we moved into NLP and some amount of, machine learning and then, related areas. Some products started to support that. Some platforms we created internally, which is on the AI ops side, a software testing side, a DevOps side, RPA side. So we had a set of platforms that we created internally, which was also something I've been running with, and rolling these out into our own deliveries. Many times you have to really coach, educate, get these teams up to speed on these technologies and why we are doing it. So it was almost like a, I would say, 40, 50,000 people behavior change management or a change management process we undertook. And a lot of training, a lot of things we mandated through the training and learning programs. I know it's very easy to say, but then to get those numbers, some of the targets set on the units. So I've been working with every unit within the company to drive this, right? So in some sense, my customers were internal, but then they are also facing the systems and customers outside. So you have to really expose my small team along with them to the customers, right? That's how it used to work. So it was quite a daunting thing, but we really achieved a. I don't want to share the numbers in this call, but I can say that was a very fulfilling journey. Year on year we could do, and I would think the direction we set was really useful. But then after a 4 or 5 years, it became normal, right? When you really started to bid for a new program, automation and everything else will become part and parcel of it. But initial days, yeah, there was an amount of, I would say, runway or possibility we had in that sense. Yeah. I mean, the interesting add-on to that, Shiv, I know I'm not in active role with anything, a company like that, but my view is that with Gen AI, whatever we couldn't do at that time, maybe from a text point of view, I mean, I know it's also applicable to vision and things like that, is now maybe 100 times, I would say, strong, right? Because NLP, there's only so much you could do those days. I mean, because it had its own issues of training and whatever. But then now with the Gen AI and the amount of technology that you have at hand, you could do really a lot more in text related processing and the voice related and audio and all those areas. So you really have a huge avenue at the moment for the industry to even to improve the productivity side of the world. I know, forget about the new revenues and new revenue lines, but even improving what you do in a better way, they're much better technologies at hand.
Yeah. So, two things here, which is again something that I'm still trying to understand as so many things are changing and all that. Now, today, most people, when they say AI, they kind of equate it or they mean only Gen AI,
Yeah,
not
that's right.
some of the other technologies that you spoke about, and which are still relevant, whether it is big data or machine learning or
Yeah.
analytics, prediction, etc., etc. That is one aspect. The second is at least after these LLMs and LLM-based solutions have mushroomed,
Yeah.
we're also talking about uh, something that used to talk about probably a couple of decades ago, which was when the whole desktop-based development or it's like Access or even Excel or others with macros, where
Yeah.
users could start developing some applications for themselves. So, which kind of, in a way, maybe called as a democratization of technology adoption. At the same time, within an enterprise, it kind of leads to mushrooming, code, which could possibly open up a lot of threats.
Yeah.
So, what is your take on the impact of AI on these things?
No, I mean, honestly, the one area where Gen AI is really pushing very strong or hard is the software engineering, the coding itself, right? I mean, look at all the co-pilots and the cursor and Replit and whatnot. And I mean, I think the more I read and understand, the if you were to leave that initial, I mean, enthusiasm and then come down to the reality check, not everything is rosy. I mean, because you also need to spend time to review or make sure that you vet what comes out of this, because some of the things are not even technology, right? When I am a delivery leader and I'm going to cut a code and tomorrow is going to go live, I need to make sure that my customer is protected on IP, the security aspects, right? All kind of things, because otherwise, you will see some amount of repercussions on that. I mean, so, and I'm not saying that this can't be done, but then my point is, that initial euphoria about generating some address management
Mm.
thing or a library management, or I mean, you give a prompt and you get an application out, which is very good. I mean, the good thing happened with Gen AI, in my take is, when I used to struggle with these Watson and AI and whatever, it is very hard to make people understand what is AI. I mean, what is the real benefit of this? Today, with the chat GPT and all this stuff, I mean, every kid knows that what exactly the impact in some sense. So that whole change in the whole attitude towards AI is maybe the biggest advantage that we have got in the last 3 years, because people are not more averse to it. This whole idea of AI is well understood. Whether it'll give you like precise results, I wouldn't think it'll ever give, because that's how that beast is. But there are many use cases you don't need that. I mean, you can live with what it produces, whether it is about forecasting, prediction, clustering, classification, and so on and so forth, and even coding. I mean, my view is that if you know coding well, fairly well, that will be a great addition to you. It's like a assistant, right? I mean, and that's what I'm hearing also in the industry. If you're a good coder, maybe you don't need two more junior guys. So I think it may be a cycle that we will go through, like every other tool, which it will get settled down how to use this the best way, and organizations will get used to how to do this in the form and manner that it will be secure and it will be beneficial and so on and so forth. Maybe we are in that journey. I would think. I would not think anyone has cracked it. I mean, whenever I speak to some of the people in the industry today, they are all in that journey. I mean, but keep aside the marketing bits people make it. But I think there is a lot of interest to get onboarded. It's not, people are not pushing back anymore. I mean, if it was 5 years back, I mean, why should I use? That was the immediate question that you get. That is really the good thing. I can see what happened.
I can maybe 200% agree with you. The last few months, I've been experimenting with different tools for different specific use cases or trying to do that. And then I reached a point when I said,
Yeah.
I have to get a little more serious. So after
Okay.
probably a couple of decades of not writing any code myself,
Yeah.
I said, let me install Cursor. And then last 1 month, I've been playing around with it.
Got it.
Actually, I have some application to develop. Hopefully, I'll be able to show it to you soon.
Okay.
To not to oversimplify, where I found, or if I were to characterize that, it's at one level a very good thought partner.
Yeah.
Initially for your refining your design, your specifications, and so on. But
Yeah.
the moment you cross that line, it's more like an over enthusiastic intern,
You're right. Yeah.
which sometimes makes it a little frustrating. Uh,
Correct.
like you're saying, the silly mistakes or whatever. So you have to be there, not take everything for granted, or just assume and then move further. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but maybe we'll talk about it some other time. But then it's very interesting,
Yeah.
to
I think it's a very welcome thing in my view. I know people say software engineers not required and all those dramatic statements, but maybe it's a bit overhyped. But my view is that this industry will go through some serious transformation, is my view.
mm,
I
mm,
know we have gone through ourselves in the last 40 years, many of that, but then it'll be one more, which is a very positive thing. My view is that if you take it in a positive spirit and keep it like an assistant to run with you, I feel it'll be a very good thing. I mean, you look at all the Stack Overflow and Gitpile, I mean, GitHub,
yeah,
millions of code and lines of code lying there. We used to go and look at what to do in a situation. Same thing comes to you. I mean, and then maybe
yeah.
it is structured better and then formatted well and
So as we kind of come towards the end of our conversation, there are a couple of things which I wanted to quickly,
oh,
get your inputs on. One
sure.
is you talked a lot about technology and developers being replaced, not being replaced, and all that. What would be your advice to two segments of people? One who's either considering a career in IT or just starting out, and second is
Mhm.
those who are probably typically going through a mid-career crisis, saying that, oh, I've been doing this, now what do I do? Okay, should I continue to be technical? Should I become managerial? Or with all this technology, everybody is talking about AI, everybody's talking, will I get outdated? What should I do? Or should I go do a startup? There are a lot of these things typically, in the mid-career thing. So do you have any thoughts for them?
Yeah. I know it's a very loaded question, right, Shiv, but then with all the success and some of the very humbling failures I had, all I can say is, I mean, this is my learning. Change is constant. It's inevitable. Better not fight it, right? But the same time, change management is the most hardest thing. Context, if you look at it, the only thing we can be integrated into anything that you do. I know today, if you look at the amount of channels you have and the experts that you have around, a youngster, I mean, I really don't know enough to comment about their type of, courses they go through and whatnot. But my view is that many of them get engaged into some internships and things of that kind. And many of them are really lucky to be part of some of those uh, projects and startups and early part of the life cycle. And I think what I have seen is, sometimes it is like this may be very personal also. There is some merit in learning how to build software or how to build applications, right? It's just not about coding. I mean, it's a way of looking at it like an engineering and then learning it that way. I mean, my only advice to the guys who are getting into it, eh, that principle hasn't changed in my mind. It doesn't matter whether it is Gen AI or any other great technology. If we are really trying to say, software is running the business, and if that is going to be integral to anything we do, that is to be looked at as an engineering. It has to have that process. It has to be everything that we learned, by doing mistakes. they really have to understand that early on, so that I feel just not learning a language or learning a cursor, just don't stop there, right? Treat it like an engineering. I mean, how do I take it live? I mean, that part of it, whether it is about managing releases, fixing issues, I mean, the 9 yards about how do you really take it something useful for, the customer to consume, should be their target. I think the people who are on the mid path, I think, I mean, rather leaders, I think as a leader, you need to really keep that technical leadership edge always. Apart from your ability to motivate your teams and deal with your customers and understand the customers, objectives and goals, all that is over and above. I mean, even recruiting people, all that comes separate. But then, as a minimum, I mean, if you really need to be surviving this game, you have to continue to learn and then make sure that you're on top of obviously the technology and that assembling that whole thing, right? I mean, I'm sure that maybe if you're doing a new application or even maintaining an application, all that is around the technology and domain, you have to really get closer. I mean, if it's about learning, do it, because I remember 2015 when I got into this whole automation AI, I went and first thing I did was two certifications. I mean, one was the Andrew Ng. I mean, it's a very famous one from the Stanford. They have a couple of those certifications. And I can tell you the perspective changes, because you really know exactly what these things mean.
Yeah.
So you're not really get caught into this whole hype cycle. I mean, you know exactly people are bullshitting or really making sense and so on and so forth. So there is no shortcut to learning. I mean, my view is that whether you are young, old, middle age, uh, don't stop learning. Maybe that's the only thing I can tell.
Yeah, wonderful. So I think just one last question. With whatever is happening, particularly in the IT industry or even otherwise, and
Right.
also all through the time that I've known you also, how do you stay grounded? Plus, not being swayed by the situation, not become, say, overtly upset or any of those kinds of things, maintaining your calm balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do have my amount of stress and whatever, if I can say so. But obviously, I mean, I know there's this one term which we talk a lot of the work-life balance. I mean, I know it's something like that I didn't have much, but I try to integrate the work and life. I mean, that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I know Narayana Murthy get blasted for 70 hours and whatever, but I lived through that era of 70 hours. I mean, if I can say that, I mean, so there is no, I would say, I mean, saying that hard work is not required. I mean, hard work definitely is a component of this whole equation. But then getting a team built around you, I think this is one thing I've been always trying to do. I mean, try to build a team, maybe even with people who are better than you, right? I think that is something I learned from my mentors. I know when we construct a team, I think that really helped me to weather a lot of storm. I mean, obviously, I have made mistakes, but then, relatively, I've been successful. I would think that's how I call it. I also judged wrongly a few, many times, but I think that would really help you to uh, get the right, I would say, support when it is most needed. And then, everything else is, I think I understand the goal, like I was telling about that 580. I mean, when you have a real goal to run with, I think a lot of things will be very clear. And, my view is that sometimes that is what is people get swayed and that those are the engagements I still remember. Whenever I had a very, very clear goal, an outcome, that I think I still can call out all those experiences which I went through, right? So I think I don't know what else I can add to this. I'm pretty sure I never stopped learning. I mean, I know maybe not very applicable immediately, but like I said, when I got out with a high with all this AI and whatnot, a very interesting topic to me, and I continued. I still continue to read and learn, but maybe not undertook anything so seriously as a goal to get delivered. But yeah, I mean, that's where I'm currently.
Wonderful. On that note, George, once again, thanks for coming to the show and then sharing your story, particularly all these anecdotes and experiences. It's been really wonderful.
Thank you. Very nice, Shiv. I know you've been prodding me and getting the best out of what I wanted to also convey. Thanks for that. I know it was a very nice reminiscing, or rather, going back through my whatever 30, 40 years, what I did. Yeah, thanks for that, Shiv. Appreciate it.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.